Welcome to the deep dive. And per your preferences, we are skipping the long, drawn-out introduction today and getting straight into it.
Or just jumping right to the good stuff.
Exactly. So today we are looking at Mark Manson's massively popular book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
Right. A very counterintuitive approach to living a good life.
And our mission for you today is to extract the most surprising and practical nuggets from this material.
Really to help you reevaluate what you care about, cut through the noise, and figure out how to choose better problems.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because right at the heart of this entire philosophy is a massive paradox.
Well, it's a huge paradox.
Yeah.
The idea that trying to be happy all the time is exactly what makes us miserable.
Which is, it's fascinating to start with because it runs counter to literally everything we are told.
We are constantly bombarded with messages telling us to be happier, be wealthier, be smarter, just be the best.
Right.
But this conventional life advice actually fixates on what you lack. It lasers in on your perceived shortcomings.
Like you stand in front of a mirror and say affirmations about being beautiful because you fundamentally feel that you aren't.
Exactly.
So that leads us to the perfect anti-hero for this entire concept. The absolute last person you would expect to find at the center of a self-improvement deep dive.
Oh, you mean Charles Bukowski?
Yes, Charles Bukowski.
What a character to build a philosophy around.
I mean, the man was an alcoholic, a chronic gambler, a deadbeat, and on his best days, a poet.
He wanted to be a writer, but he was rejected by everyone for decades.
Constantly rejected. He worked a terrible job at a post office, spent all his money on booze, and woke up passed out on the floor.
But then, at age 50, after a literal lifetime of failure, an editor at a small indie publishing house takes a weird interest in him.
Gives him a shot.
Yeah.
And Bukowski writes his first novel in 3 weeks, dedicates it to nobody, and goes on to sell over 2 million books.
And the conventional self-help narrative would spin this right. They would say he never gave up, he believed in himself, and he finally won.
But that's the kicker. He didn't succeed because he suddenly believed in himself or tried to be a winner.
He succeeded because he accepted he was a loser.
Yes, he completely accepted it. He knew he was a failure, accepted it, and wrote honestly about it.
His tombstone literally just says, "Don't try."
Don't try. Which perfectly illustrates this modern psychological epidemic Manson describes.
The feedback loop from hell.
The feedback loop from hell.
Our society, fueled by consumer culture and social media, has basically convinced us that having negative experiences is totally unacceptable.
So we feel bad about feeling bad. We feel guilty for feeling guilty.
Think about how this plays out for you in daily life. Have you ever gotten anxious about a meeting, and then that anxiety cripples you, so you start getting anxious about being anxious?
Oh, absolutely. Or it's like when I get mad at myself for having a completely messy kitchen.
Right.
And then I get so stressed out about the fact that I'm mad about the kitchen that I just sit on the couch and ignore the dishes entirely.
You're just spiraling about your own reaction.
Yes.
That is the loop in action. And it ties right into what the philosopher Alan Watts called the backwards law.
Break down the backwards law for us because it sounds like a riddle.
It does sound like a riddle. The backwards law states that the desire for more positive experiences is itself a negative experience.
Okay.
And conversely, the acceptance of a negative experience is actually a positive experience.
So let's make sure we really grasp that. The more desperately you want to be rich.
The poorer and more unworthy you feel, regardless of how much you actually make.
Because the pursuit of the positive highlights the negative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Therefore, the avoidance of suffering is in itself a form of suffering.
Which means we need to redefine the title of the book. Not giving a feck doesn't mean being indifferent.
Right, because if you are totally indifferent to everything, you're either a psychopath or you're just a couch potato hiding from the world.
It actually means being comfortable with being different.
But more importantly, finding something more important than your adversity to care about.
If you find yourself getting furious at the grocery store because a cashier won't accept an expired 30-cent coupon,
It's probably because you don't have anything more meaningful in your life to care about.
I want to turn this directly to you, the listener, for a moment. Think about the Texas saying, "The smallest dog barks the loudest."
A confident person doesn't feel the need to walk into a room and prove they're confident.
Are the areas in your life where you try the hardest to be positive actually the areas where you feel the most lack?
Are you darking loudly just to convince yourself?
That is a tough question to sit with. And honestly, it makes me think of the superhero we all actually need right now.
Disappointment Panda.
Yes, Manson invented an imaginary superhero for the book called Disappointment Panda.
I love Disappointment Panda.
His superpower is that he goes door to door wearing a cheesy eye mask, telling people the harsh truths they desperately need to hear but refuse to accept.
He just knocks on your door and tells you things like, making money won't make your kids love you.
Or what you consider friendship is really just your constant attempt to impress people.
We need Disappointment Panda because he understands the biological purpose of pain.
We tend to think of suffering as a bug in human evolution, something to be cured.
But it's actually a feature. Take physical pain. When you stub your toe, it hurts terribly.
But that pain teaches you physical boundaries. It teaches you not to walk blindly into coffee tables.
Psychological pain works the exact same way.
The emotional pain of a terrible breakup or a brutal professional failure teaches us psychological boundaries.
It teaches us how to avoid making the same mistakes in the future.
Wait, hold on. I think a lot of people listening, myself included, might push back on this a little bit.
How so?
If I win the lottery tomorrow, a lot of my daily stress and suffering genuinely does go away.
Sure does.
So how does Manson justify the idea that we shouldn't try to eliminate our problems?
Because the illusion is that a problem-free life exists.
It doesn't.
Problems never go away, they just upgrade. See, exactly. Manson points out that Warren Buffett has money problems, and a homeless person down at the convenience store has money problems.
Buffett's money problems are just better problems to have.
Happiness doesn't come from avoiding problems, it comes from solving them.
Happiness is a constant work in progress because solving problems is a constant work in progress.
The solutions to today's problems simply lay the foundation for tomorrow's problems.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Manson shares a personal story about how for half his life, he obsessed over becoming a rock star.
He spent hours fantasizing about playing guitar on stage to screaming crowds.
But it never happened, and it took him years to realize why.
He didn't actually want it.
He was in love with the result, the stage, the applause, but he wasn't in love with the process.
He hated the grueling daily practice, the logistics of finding gigs hauling heavy gear around in the rain.
He wanted the reward, but not the struggle.
Which brings us to Manson's ultimate crucial question for you. What pain do you want to sustain?
Everyone wants the corner office and the massive salary.
But who actually wants to suffer through the 60-hour work weeks, the long commutes, and the obnoxious corporate politics to get there?
Everyone wants an amazing physique.
But who wants the pain of calculating every meal and spending hours in the gym?
Who you are is defined by what you are willing to struggle for.
Consciously choosing your pain.
Before we move forward, let's just do a quick recap so we don't get lost in the weeds here.
Good idea.
We've established that trying to be happy makes us miserable.
That our problems don't disappear, but just upgrade.
And that the secret to a good life is figuring out which struggles are actually worth your time.
But society makes it incredibly hard to choose ordinary struggles.
Manson talks about this guy, Jimmy, a delusional entrepreneur he knew.
Oh, Jimmy. He was always talking about his next billion-dollar medical app or a major charity he was keynoting.
He was a professional leech living off his family, maxing out credit cards at fine restaurants to impress models.
But he genuinely believed his own hype. He was relentlessly positive.
But he never actually did anything. Jimmy is the product of what mass media creates.
A tyranny of exceptionalism.
We are conditioned to believe that being average is the ultimate failure.
So people like Jimmy delude themselves into feeling exceptional without doing any of the actual work.
What's fascinating here is how the metrics we use to measure our lives dictate our reality.
Let's look at the story of Hiroo Onoda. He was a Japanese soldier deployed to the Philippines during World War II with strict orders to never surrender.
He fought in the jungle for nearly 30 years after the war ended.
Living off insects completely isolated.
30 years in the jungle. That is unfathomable.
When a Japanese adventurer finally found him in 1974, Onoda said he regretted nothing because his suffering had meaning.
It was driven by absolute loyalty to the Japanese empire.
Right. But then he returns to Japan, and he finds a modern capitalist consumerist culture.
The empire he fought for was gone.
Suddenly his meaning vanished. His past suffering felt like a complete waste, and he became incredibly depressed.
He ended up moving to Brazil, right?
Yeah. He chose his suffering, which gave it meaning. But when the metric changed, the meaning collapsed.
Okay, so if Onoda's entire reality collapsed just because his metric changed, how do we figure out what metrics we are using?
Because I doubt most of us are consciously choosing them.
We usually aren't. And that is why Manson introduces this self-awareness onion.
Peeling it back makes you want to cry, but it's necessary.
The first outermost layer of the onion is simply understanding your emotions.
Just being able to say, I feel sad or I feel angry. Many people struggle even with this.
And the second layer.
The second layer is asking why you feel those emotions. Why are you angry? Is it because you failed at something?
And the third layer.
The third deepest layer is the core. Your personal values and the metrics you use to measure success.
Why do you consider that a failure? By what standard are you judging yourself?
Let's look at how those metrics play out in the real world.
Because Manson uses two famous rock musicians to illustrate this perfectly.
In 1983, Dave Mustaine was kicked out of his band right before they recorded their first album.
He was handed a bus ticket and sent home.
That band was Metallica.
Mustaine swore he would start a new band and be so successful that Metallica would regret firing him.
He formed Megadeth, sold over 25 million albums, and toured the world.
But because his metric for success was beating the Metallica,
One of the most successful bands in human history.
he still felt like a massive failure.
Now compare that to Pete Best. He was the drummer for the Beatles and was kicked out right before they got famous.
Replaced by Ringo Starr.
Best was deeply depressed for a long time, naturally. But he ultimately adjusted his values.
He shifted his metric to focusing on a simple life and his family.
He eventually became a happy, contented man.
You probably aren't getting kicked out of a multi-platinum rock band this week.
But you might be measuring your success by whether you make more money than your sibling.
Or whether your house is nicer than your neighbor's.
And that is the difference between good and bad values.
Bad values are reliant on external factors you can't control.
Like popularity, constant pleasure, or beating someone else's record.
Good values are internal process-oriented and entirely controllable.
Values like honesty, curiosity, or taking responsibility.
You can always control whether you are being honest. You cannot control whether someone else likes you.
Speaking of taking responsibility, Manson brings up the philosopher William James.
In the 1860s, James was a chronic invalid.
He had a terrible stomach condition, an eye problem that temporarily blinded him back, spasms, and he was deeply suicidal.
He dropped out of medical school feeling like a total fraud.
But one night, he decided to conduct a deeply personal experiment.
He decided to take 100% responsibility for everything in his life for 1 year.
No matter what happened, he would view it as his responsibility to fix it or respond to it.
Taking that radical responsibility completely turned his life around.
Right.
He became the father of American psychology.
This brings up a vital distinction that trips a lot of people up. The difference between fault and responsibility.
It may not be your fault that something terrible happened to you.
But it is always your responsibility to figure out how to respond.
Take the teenagers in a BBC documentary Manson references about obsessive-compulsive disorder.
One girl had a compulsion to tap surfaces. If she didn't, she was flooded with thoughts of her family dying.
Another boy was a severe germaphobe.
It is absolutely not their fault that they have a genetic neurological disorder.
But the therapy they underwent focused on the fact that it was their responsibility to choose how to manage it.
To choose a value, like having a normal social life, that was more important than their compulsion.
It's like if someone rear-ends your car, it's not your fault your car is wrecked.
But it is your responsibility to call your insurance, get it fixed, and figure out how to get to work.
You can't just sit on the side of the road forever yelling that it wasn't your fault.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about that famous Spider-Man quote.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Manson argues we should actually flip it. It's actually, with great responsibility comes great power.
When you accept responsibility for your problems, you empower yourself to solve them.
Blaming others, even if it is their fault, leaves you powerless.
But taking that responsibility can leave you completely paralyzed, right? Not knowing where to start.
Manson talks about his early days trying to be an online entrepreneur.
He had quit his job, was totally broke, and was absolutely terrified.
He just played video games all day to avoid working.
But he remembered advice from his high school math teacher, Mr. Packwood.
Packwood used to say that if you're stuck on a math problem, don't just sit there and think about it. Just do something.
Write something down, and the right ideas will eventually show up.
We usually think about motivation as a linear sequence. You get inspired, which gives you motivation, which leads to action.
But it's actually an endless loop. Action leads to inspiration, which leads to motivation, which leads to more action.
If you are stuck paralyzing yourself with big questions, you just need to do the smallest viable action.
Do something. Open the blank document. Put on your gym shoes.
The action itself will generate the inspiration to keep going.
Once Manson got going, he really got going. He ended up traveling to 55 different countries.
He was living the ultimate digital nomad dream, bouncing from continent to continent, having constant adventures.
It sounded like the ultimate freedom, but he eventually realized that absolute freedom without commitment actually means nothing.
The paradox of choice makes us miserable. If you have 28 places you could live, you'll agonize over whether you pick the right one.
True depth of experience, true meaning, only comes from committing to one place, one craft, or one person.
You have to reject the alternatives to find meaning.
And part of that rejection is learning how to be radically honest.
I know Manson travels a lot in the book to figure this stuff out. Doesn't he have this massive culture shock moment in Russia about how we handle honesty?
He does, and it perfectly illustrates this point. He was in St. Petersburg and went on a coffee date.
Okay.
Within 3 minutes, the woman looked at him and bluntly told him that what he had just said was stupid.
Wow.
Not aggressively, just as a matter of fact. He was shocked.
In the West, we have this fake politeness where we smile and agree even when we don't mean it, because our economic system rewards salesmanship and likability.
But in Russia, historically, trust was the most valuable currency for survival under harsh regimes.
And you only build trust through blunt honesty.
Manson realized that this Russian bluntness was incredibly liberating. Rejecting things and being willing to be rejected is absolutely essential for building a genuine identity.
If you never say no, you stand for nothing.
So being honest means rejecting things that don't align with your values.
But Manson goes somewhere even deeper to make this point stick right.
It's not just about surviving a bad coffee date. There's an even bigger concept we are constantly avoiding, and it's the one thing that actually gives those values meaning.
Right. The ultimate deadline that forces us to choose what we care about is our own mortality.
The shadow of death is what gives life meaning.
Manson experienced this firsthand when he was 19. He was at a lake party with his friend Josh.
They were drinking, having a good time. There was a cliff over the lake.
Later that night, Josh jumped off the cliff into the dark water. No one saw him go in.
His legs cramped and he ground. It took scuba divers 3 hours to find his body.
That tragic, deeply traumatic event woke Manson up from a life of apathy.
It forced him to realize that if there's no reason to do anything, there's also no reason not to do anything.
This aligns perfectly with the work of cultural anthropologist Ernest Becker.
He wrote a Pulitzer Prize-winning book called The Denial of Death while he was dying of colon cancer.
Becker argued that we are all terrified of our inevitable physical death.
To compensate for this death terror, we build conceptual selves.
Immortality projects that we hope will outlive us.
What does an immortality project look like for the everyday person?
Historically, it was putting your name on a building or writing a symphony. But for a lot of people today, an immortality project isn't a hospital wing.
It's a perfectly curated social media feed.
It's fiercely defending an extreme political stance online so you feel part of a timeless tribe.
It's obsessing over a job title.
We want our conceptual self to live forever. So we pour all our energy into these mirages.
So what does this all mean?
It means that if we are driven by the fear of death to care about superficial immortality projects, we are wasting our lives.
Accepting the reality of our own death is the only thing that obliterates those crappy superficial values.
It forces us to ask the real questions. What is your legacy? How will the world be slightly better because you were here?
Once you are comfortable with the fact that you are going to die, you are freed from the entitlement and the petty concerns that consume so much of our daily lives.
Let's take a breath and recap this incredible journey.
We started by embracing the backwards law, accepting that wanting a positive experience is a negative experience.
We talked about finding the specific pain you actually want to sustain rather than just wanting the reward.
We explored taking radical responsibility for your metrics, utilizing the do something principle when you are stuck.
And ultimately letting the harsh reality of death clarify what truly matters to you.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, to take away today.
It revolves around what is known as Manson's law of avoidance.
This is the psychological principle that the more something threatens your identity, the more you will avoid doing it.
The more a conversation or an action threatens to change how you view yourself, the harder you will run from it.
So I leave you with this final thought to ponder.
Think about the one thing you've been putting off, or the problem in your life you just can't seem to solve.
Is it possible that you're not avoiding it because it's too hard, but because succeeding at it or failing at it would force you to change how you see yourself?
What identity are you clinging to that is secretly holding you back?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Remember, the only way to be slightly less wrong tomorrow is to bravely question what you are absolutely certain about today.
Until next time.